afternoon.
So Mark, for those that have not seen you before, what's your function on the call today?
Well, I run the GreenStones Business Mastermind section of the business, so it really, hopefully, to offer the help with regards to business growth and how people can get through this stage, I guess.
Brilliant, thank you, and thank you to Neil for the first question. We've got a question on the Q&A already. Brilliant, thank you, Nathan. What's your role?
Yeah, well, as most of you probably know, I'm a lead advisor at GreenStones, part of the team there, look after my own customers amongst other things, and yeah, we'll hopefully be answering the technical questions on what can and can't be claimed.
Brilliant, thank you. So just a reminder, for there's a few people to just come through, any questions, put them in the Q&A, and we're going to focus on three things basically. One, what help is out there for only directors of owned and managed businesses. One, around the furloughing, and then the second or the third one is around the self-employment. So let's start with the big question. I think this came up 10 times out of the 50 questions that we've got. Nathan, what help is there out there at the moment for owner managed businesses?
Yeah, so it's never good to start on a negative, to be honest, but at the minute, not a lot. So if you're an owner managed business, so you are the main director or one of perhaps 2 or 3 directors, and you typically pay yourself in salary and dividends, there is nothing out there to support you at the minute, nothing to replace your income, I should say. So if you have a property, you're likely to get a grant towards that. If you qualify for small business rates relief, but other than that, you won't get any replacement income as the law states at the minute. So last night's announcement for self-employment does not cover salary dividend directors. So it's all pretty bad news on that side.
So basically, if you're an owner managed business and you're a director of an owner managed business, your options, if you pay rates, is to go for the small, the one-off grant relief. If you pay the small,
Yep.
you get the relief, which is 10 grand basically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in retail, hospitality, or a leisure business, is that the right definition?
Sounds about right.
You get the extra 25 grand.
Yep.
Other than that, and furloughing, which we'll get to, and I've already seen a question that's come in around this, which we'll get to in a minute. Other than the potential for furloughing, that's your lot.
Yeah,
okay.
and for potentially you could claim SSP, but that's £94 a week for 2 weeks. That's not really going to keep the wolf from the door.
Okay, so let's just expand on that, because that's a question that came in on the registration forms. If I am ill as a director, I am able to claim for 2 weeks, did you say?
Yeah, £94.25, I think it is, for 2 weeks. The government will pay that back to the company, and the company can pay you.
Okay, so you can obviously pay yourself before the company. You just deduct it off the PAYE payment, do you, or get claim?
Yeah, that's right. It comes off your PAYE payment. If you don't pay PAYE, then you have to wait until HMRC refund it, which obviously we can help with.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Next question then, or the first question: if I receive monies from the government, so is the grant taxable, or is any of the furlough monies taxable?
Well, in theory it's all taxable, but in reality, all it's going to do is reduce your exposure to the costs you're going to incur. So to make it almost tax neutral, because you'd get tax relief on the expenses, the wages, and then the income coming in is taxable. So they're net off. The effect will be nil from a tax perspective.
So that's on the furloughing, Nathan. What about on the business rates? Is that business rates grant coming into the business? Is that taxable?
Yes, yeah, the same thing. Although you're not going to have perhaps direct rates costs to apply that against, but that will just go to the overall running of the business, perhaps repairs, mortgage payments, whatever it may be. So that will just go towards that, and therefore it will count as taxable. Will just reduce your taxable expenses. As far as I can see, I've not seen anything to say it's going to be tax free.
No, so but basically, in layman's terms, it's treated as a sale, as income.
It is. Yeah. It's almost like another sale. Yeah. Okay. There'll be no VAT on it, but it will increase your taxable profit.
Brilliant. Thank you. And we're gonna flip in and out as the questions come up. But what restrictions are there on individual employees flipping in and out of furlough?
Well, last night we got a little bit of guidance on it, which says a 3-week rule. So, but what we don't know, you can be furloughed for 3 weeks, then come back, but I'm not sure how long you can be back until you can be re-furloughed. I've not seen the detailed legislation on that, if there is any yet. So it looks like there is a bit of flexibility there. Originally, we thought if you're furloughed, and if you're back, you're back. but it does look like you can go on and off. But I'm not sure yet, or we're not sure whether you have to be back in for a certain period of time before you can be re-furloughed, or if you can just repeat the process throughout this interim period.
Yeah, so I spent some time this morning looking at that guidance, and what it says is that if you're going to furlough somebody, you have to be furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. But there's nothing that anybody has seen at the moment that stops you extending that furlough. So if you furlough somebody and then you furlough them for 5 weeks, then that's acceptable. But if it gets to week 4 and you want to furlough them some more, you don't have to bring them back and then unfurlough them. But if you choose to bring them back, say it's the end of the month, so you could furlough them for the first 3 weeks, and then you need them back in the office for a week or whatever it is to generate invoices, then you could furlough them for the following 3 weeks after they've been back a week, subject to the legislation. So at the moment, all of this that we're sharing is based on guidance. It's not been legislated for, and obviously until it goes through the House of Lords and all the rest of it, we don't know what the actual final figures would be. That's it. And if you furlough somebody, am I right in saying, Nathan, that you can't be partially furloughed? You're either furloughed, right, yeah, or you're not furloughed.
You can't be furloughed but doing a little bit of work. You're either furloughed or you're working.
Excellent, thank you. Question from Paul. Myself and my wife both work for our company. We are seeing construction sites close and don't think they'll be long before they're all closed and our income will cease. We are PAYE'd by our company. Can I furlough my wife to receive help?
There's no reason why not, as far as we can see, but then she cannot do any work. So, and what they mean by doing any work is revenue generating or providing services. So even if you log on to the bank and pay somebody, pay your wage bill, for example, that is providing a service. So I think even replying to an email is providing a service. So I think you have to be completely taken out of the business entirely to be furloughed. So if you're in a position where, in this said example, your wife can avoid work completely, not check emails, not take calls, not make payments, anything like that, then I don't see any reason why not. The furlough can apply.
Yeah, so for the furlough to apply, have to do no work whatsoever, basically. That's the fundamental answer. And I have some slight reservations personally about the wife's wages situation. So if you furlough your wife now because you don't need her, when you then need her back in 6 months' time, I think there might be an argument from the revenue. Well, why do you need her now and you didn't need her when you furloughed her? What's changed in the interim? So I think that for the amount of money that's involved in actually doing that, I think that might be storing up problems for the future. But obviously, individual directors and owners of family businesses need to assess that situation.
Yeah, if you happen to pay yourself market salaries through PAYE, then you may choose it. It may be something to really consider. The typical arrangement of £8,500 a year salary, furloughing that is probably not going to be worth the aggravation. But if you're salaried at £2,500 a month, well, the 80% equates to that, then locking yourself away in the room for 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years is probably worth considering.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Ali, is there any expectation that this will change for owner-managed businesses? Can we exert pressure? And if so, where and how?
Well, I've seen, and I'm not sure how good this is yet, but I've seen a petition going around online that is gathering a bit of pace. I need to authenticate it, if that's the right word, and have a look into it to make sure it is legit and worth doing. And if we believe it is worth sharing, we will share it to everyone on this call for you to forward on. But I'm not prepared to share that just yet because I'm not sure if it's legit. But there is certainly going to be some pressure because there's a lot of you in that boat.
Yeah, and I've seen whether it's the same petition or not, but I've seen what looked like an official one. I think it needed 800 more signatures in order to get to the 100,000. I think it was. That means that they have to consider it for discussion in Parliament. So that there is stuff out there happening. Personally, having read lots of stuff about this over the last 2 weeks, I don't see it changing. And one of the reasons why, somebody told me many moons ago that in order for government to be influenced, it needs to offend either the Sun readers or the Daily Mirror. So they're the two big two. So if they can understand it, or that paper can understand it, then they will exert pressure, and therefore the populace will change it, like they did with the pasty tax and things like that. So, and with stuff like this, what tends to happen is people will say, the general public will say, well, you've had it good, now you've got to suffer a little bit of time. So personally, and it affects me personally as well, I can't see that changing, but we'll see what transpires over the next few days. And obviously, if we see anything, it will go in the WhatsApp group and also the Facebook group, so you'll be the first to know. Are you aware of any clients that have managed to get a business interruption loan?
Not yet. No. All I've had is negative comments so far. I don't think the banks have been helped by the government, really, because the government have announced all these measures and then not supported the banks. Again, the banks are also under a lot of pressure in the press now, and the said newspapers are now jumping on that. Whether it makes a difference, we don't know. But so far, all I've had is people having to jump through hoops and go through the normal rigmarole of applying for a loan and providing the original securities that you would have had to do a year ago. Not noticed any difference.
Yeah, so the other accountants that I was speaking to echo what Nathan has just shared. So there's a big list of stuff that you've got hoops you've got to jump through. If you mention COVID-19 or the coronavirus, then that's a detriment to it, because that obviously the risk increases. What lots of people don't understand as well is that it's government backed, but it's government backed by last resort. So the majority of them, I think I see this morning, that Barclays have said that they won't take a personal guarantee for loans of below 250,000. I think I see shared this morning, which is again is a change on where they were. So previously they lend you the money, you sign a personal guarantee, and then the government backs that personal guarantee. So if you default on the loan, then the bank comes to you first for the money, and then if you can't pay it, then they go to the government for the repayment. Is that I'm being clear with that, Nathan? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
And the other side, and I know you've mentioned Barclays, Nicola, in your application. Lloyd's was that Tuesday morning? Did Lloyd's go live with their application? I think it went live, if I remember rightly, at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 10:30 on Tuesday morning. Sorry, at 10:30 on Tuesday morning, the emails to the inbox, the application inbox, were being bounced back because the box was already full. So I don't think it's just Barclays. There's law and all the rest of it. So yeah, it's an interesting position. It did make me smile last night when he stood up and said that he was funding all this stuff for banks and all the rest of it. When in the real world, it's not quite like that. How do I apply? This is Sandra. How do I apply for the grant if you qualify for small business rates?
Oh, well, this is one bit of good news. You don't have to apply, apparently. It should be automatic, although I've not seen any. I've not known anyone to even get as much as not even an acknowledgement yet. But that is going to be automatic. Your local council will sort that and will either deposit it straight into your bank. Probably if you pay by direct debit, they'll pay into the bank, or send you a cheque if you pay them by cheque. And if you don't pay them at all, because you don't pay any rates, then you'll probably get a cheque back. But it should be automatic.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see, again, across the country, talking to other accountants, we're starting to see councils issuing those checks. So somebody told me this morning that they rang Fenland District Council or Peterborough District Council, whichever one it is that you ring, and the lady that was answering the phone and answering the questions about the rates rebates wasn't the happiest person in the world. So I imagine she's getting quite a few calls. But as far as we're aware, Nathan, that should be
imminent and automatic.
Yeah. Imminent. Brilliant. Thank you. That's that one. Rob, if I get furloughed for 3 weeks and after the first 2 weeks the scheme comes to an end, can your employer pull you back immediately, or do they have to wait until the end of the 3 weeks?
Ultimately, I don't know, because that's a bit of an exceptional circumstance. We've not had any guidance on that, but I presume you mean if the furlough scheme comes to an end, then that would tend to suggest you're getting back to work as normal, and then you'd get paid as normal. But yeah, like I say, that the furlough scheme will be extended if need be. The government have said so. If you do get pulled back into work, you'll be getting pulled back in to be paid.
Yeah, to do some work, basically. So basically the job retention scheme is what its official name is in place for 3 months, so up until and including the 31st of May. So if they shorten that for any reason, then they should be shortening it because you've got work and then you can get on with the work. But I've not seen any suggestion that is likely to be the case. John says, as an owner manager, can I send myself home under furlough as there are no clinics open for me to work in? I work in 2 separate clinics, both of which are closed, so I cannot work. So that goes.
I'm assuming that's similar to an owner managed, typically salary and dividend income. It'll be the same basis. So in theory, you can furlough yourself, but then you can't check the bank and you can't phone people for updates, and therefore it's impossible to furlough yourself without closing your business.
Yeah, so there is a simple answer to that, John, which is the one that Nathan just gave. And then the more complicated one is it depends on whether you are self-employed or a sole trader or you operate through a limited company, because the rules that were shared last night, or the compensation rules that were shared last night for the self-employed, are obviously different to those of owner-managed businesses that operate through a limited company. So it's perhaps a good time, Nathan, to share what those rules were or what those allowances were that were shared with us last night to help the self-employed. So can you just give us a brief summary of what they were?
Yep. Well, the first thing is you had to have had some self-employment income declared on a return as at 5th of April 2019. So if your self-employment started on or after the 6th of April 2019, the government have specifically said this isn't for you and you'll have to claim benefits in the ordinary way, universal credit, tax credit, whatever it may be. So that's the first thing. So if you were self-employed as at 5th of April 2019, then you will receive up to 80% of your average monthly income over the previous 3 years of self-employment, with a cap of £2,500 per month. So it's good news for average middle earners under the self-employment regime. Now, that income will be paid to you as a bit similar to the grant we mentioned earlier for employers. It'll be paid to you directly, and it's just subsidising income that you ordinarily would have received. So that'll be taxable income in the same way that if you provided a sale.
Okay, and then my understanding is there's a cap of £50,000 with it. So if you earn more than £50,000, you don't get anything at all. You don't even get the £2,500.
If you're higher, if you earn over 50, so basically if you're a higher rate taxpayer, then you won't be getting anything.
And am I also right in saying at the moment we don't know whether that will be assessed on taxable profits or trading profits?
Yeah, we don't know yet. I suspect it will be taxable profits. I can't, in the same way that when you go in for a mortgage, they assess your mortgage credibility on a taxable profit. But that's speculating on that, so that could be either.
Yeah, it could be. And the downside of that, obviously, is if you've bought a van or some capital assets or something like that in the last 3 years, then that will depress that year's taxable profit, and therefore the average. So don't go and get your last 3 years worth of accounts, add it up, divide it by 36 and say, okay, that's the amount of money that we're going to receive, because that is not necessarily the right calculation. But as it stands, nobody knows what is the right calculation.
And just on that subject, because we've already been asked, I'm preempting a question here. Lots of people have asked for amended returns. I'm not keen on doing amended returns now, and suddenly you realise that expense wasn't a business expense. I'm not keen on that, but naturally would consider each on their own merits. So if it's genuine error, genuine oversight, but I think amended returns will come under a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah, a significant amount. It's like a red rag to a bull, we'll put it like that. And then the last thing to note on the self-employment income is if you've not submitted your tax return for the year ended 5th of April 2019, you've now got 4 weeks to submit it in order to be included in the scheme. Have I got that right, Nathan?
That's right, but I didn't pay too much attention to that because obviously we made sure that all of our customers were filed on time at the end of January.
Yeah, of course. I'm just, if there's anybody watching that's not with us,
or naturally, yeah,
a little bit slower than what perhaps they should be, then you've got 4 weeks basically in order to submit that return and make sure you get that grant. And are we sure, Nathan, that that's automatic? Because somebody shared with me this morning that the revenue have told them they're going to issue a form, and they was querying whether they was issuing a form in order to slow the process down.
Well, I don't know anything about the form. I understand it will be an online application, maybe through self-assessment portal, maybe through your agent. We don't know. They could issue a form. I think it's going to be electronic, and it will be done in June, did we say? And then you'll get 3 months worth in as one lump sum in June.
Yeah, his actual words was, "It won't be before June." So because they're focusing on the employee job retention scheme before they do the self-employed job retention scheme. So, on all these conversations that we have, I always share my skepticism about a government department being able to do something as quickly as what they say they can within a budget that they say they're going to do it. But only time will tell with regards to how this works. So another question from Vivian. I have a staff member who has been working part-time while studying, so appears to be earning less than last year. Started to build up their hours more from January, so his earnings over the last 12 weeks are higher. Is there anything that we can do, or is it just a case of last April or average of this last year?
It is exactly that. So as far as we can see, there's no special circumstances. There's no flexibility on that. It is the higher of the same month of the previous year or the average for the 1920 tax year.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I've seen. Ian, once this is all over, everybody will be back at work. What is your best guess as to what the payback is going to be with regards to how directors or self-employed are taxed? Did you watch the statement last night when he was talking about bringing in equality, Nathan? This is a speculative question. As soon as he said it, my instant reaction was that he was going to put perhaps class 1 and class 2 national insurance, or class 1 national insurance on profits as opposed to class 4, which would level it up. But then, well, it's a speculative, because then are you entitled to sick pay as a self-employed person? Are you a holiday? And it goes off into a whole world.
It is very speculative. Yeah, my mind went straight away to the 9% NI that self-employed pay will go to 12%. But you're right, you don't get the same statutory benefits being self-employed. I suspect that will be shifted. But again, we are speculating. I think the first thing that will happen is the highest rate of tax will go up from 45%, probably back to 50 or higher. Corporation tax might be moved. We don't know. We can, in my opinion, it will be marginal, 1% here or there on the average person, but there will be some degree of payback. The other side to that is, I do look at it logically. The quickest way they're going to be repaid is by people earning money. So if in 3 months no one has a job and everyone's claiming state benefits, that's not going to help. What is going to help is people working regularly, contributing to the economy, buying new cars, buying new houses. And the sooner everyone's back paying full tax and national insurance, the better. Now, there is still going to be a gap. So we can expect tax increases in a year's time. Anything above that is speculation.
Yeah, and the other thing that's there as well, which you need to remember, especially around the corporation tax, is we've got this little thing called Brexit that seems to be forgotten about. But between now and the end of the year, we need to have a trade agreement in place in order to, well, I say need to, whether that'll happen, we'll have to see. But obviously there's an argument that the corporation tax rate needs to be kept low in order to attract investment into the country. So the simple answer to that is who knows? And you've probably got as much idea as what we have at the moment. Jeremy, do you think you can do a well-being check-ins with your furlong staff, optional without an obligation perspective, making sure they're okay, coping with isolation and things like that?
I don't see why not, really, because as long as they're not providing you a service, if you are the owner and you're contacting your team to check on their well-being, you're not asking them to provide a service or generate revenue for you. If you suddenly say to them, "Oh, well, as you're all right, can you just quickly log on and help me with this?" That's a little bit different. But I would encourage that. I can't see why the government would discourage that. You surely need to keep in touch with your team and keep the relationships going, because we all want to come back hitting the ground running as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I read in the guidance that it was something like, it was called incidental contact. So it's a bit like if you ring somebody up and ask them as a friend, if you ring them up and ask them if they're all right and that sort of stuff, and there's no work done, then you're all right. But if you ring them up and say, I need to speak to Mr. Jones, what do you think, et cetera, and you start working, then that's a different scenario. Now,
no doubt sorry to interrupt, there might be a bit of ambiguity there. So if you phone up and say, oh, where did we put that key for the petty cash? And that kind of thing, is that working? Is that providing a service? I can't see that ever being checked, to be honest. But,
no, and how would anybody ever prove any of that
yeah,
conversation? But in the strictness of the guidance that we've got at the moment, then that's where we'd be. I asked 2 staff members to stay at home from the 13th due to decreased workload. I was thinking of letting them go, but was taking some time to make up a plan. Can I claim from the 13th, even though the announcement came on the 20th?
Yeah, the announcement clearly said that the furlough can be backdated to the 1st of March. So if you let them go simply because of this, because directly related to COVID-19, not because they're underperforming, not because they're not well, then you can backdate it. I would seek your own employment lawyer, HR team to advise specifically on each case, because you want to check the employment contracts first. But the legislation was put in place that anyone that was let go, sent home between the 1st and the 20th, you won't miss out on.
Yeah. So, and that's the important part of that statement that Nathan just said, was that you need to go to the contract of employment first, because that is the holy Bible, if you like. And then after you've gone through the employment contract, anything else that you do needs to obviously be in accordance with that. Mark, just got one again around marketing. If we just break away from the tax and the furloughing, what's your opinion, Mark, at the moment? Nathan celebrates. What's your opinion, Mark, at the moment? Should people be out there marketing? Is it crash? I can't even say the word on a Friday afternoon. Is it crash to be out there marketing and selling your businesses in this time? I know we're getting all sorts of emails. I'm getting all sorts of emails from with coronavirus special offers and stuff like that. What's your opinion on that, Mark?
Again, and I think I've answered the question probably several times on here and also in other places. But to me, it's got to, your business has got to stay operating. It's got to stay top of mind awareness for people. If you're going to make offers at this time, my caveat to it is, if you're going to make offers at this time, and they're offering free help, they need to be genuine. They need to be coming from the right place in the first place. Otherwise, they'll just be seen as taking advantage. I think everyone's jumped on the Joe Wicks bandwagon, and the reality is he's not just doing that to make the country fit or keep them going. He's trying to become an influencer for his own gain. And I don't mean that negatively. It's just the way we are and the way we're going. And I think for us to stop doing that, it's a good opportunity to use social media marketing, because most people are sat all day on their phones and they've got nothing else to do. So why wouldn't you be there for it and get some interest and get people knowing who you are?
Brilliant, thank you. And then back to Nathan, I think, unless you want to answer this, you can answer these sort of things now, mate. Is networking online considered to be working in your business?
Yeah.
There you go.
Doing any kind of work at all. It's yes, sitting with a lot of accountants and people mulling over all this information has given me quite a wealth of knowledge. But yes, it would definitely be considered working. Anything. I think there's some stuff which I'm guessing Nathan will probably be more clued up on, or yourself, is the training element, which I know we've got some questions coming on that. I think the training element can be anything to do with the work you do, as long as it is training, but it's not actually going to be that you're going to go and do it. So you could learn about social media, but you can't post on your social media. Yeah,
that's spot on. That's my understanding of it. So the question that Mark's alluding to is, I understand staff complete training whilst off. Does that include training to support the business when they return? So do you know the answer to that, Nathan?
Well, only that they've said, yeah, training can be undertaken, doesn't count as work. So you can train, whether it be for the purpose of your business or something else.
Yeah, so anything basically. I know of somebody that's doing lots of different training on lots of different things, but as long as they're doing training and it's basically for the benefit of the business, then that's allowable. So they can do that. The only thing you need to be slightly careful with on the training is, at the moment, the guidance says that if the 80% of the wages take somebody below the national minimum wage, that's okay, unless they are training. And if they're training, they are then working, so they need to be paid the national minimum wage for the training, the time of the training that they do. Is that's right, Nathan? Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're doing a significant amount of training whilst furloughed, there's quite complicated calculation to do there, but naturally we and employment advisors, HR team can advise on that. We can work that out.
Excellent, thank you. Next question. I need some information from my furloughed staff so I can take over their roles and activities. Would that count as work or training?
Well,
Employer.
again, I'm gonna have to take these splinters out in a minute because I'm sitting on the fence a lot. But I would say that's not working. If you've got to do a handover period, I can't see how you can be penalised for that. As long as it's not every day phoning them and they're telling you what to do. If you collect information once, I can't see that ever being taken apart. But again, I'm speculating. We don't know.
So if I weren't sitting on the fence, I would say it's definitely an HR, employment lawyer, solicitor question and not an accountancy question. If I was a little bit more relaxed about that, I'm not sure it would be that big a deal if it happened. But strictly speaking, I think that's work. That counts as work. If you'd have made that person redundant and they'd left your organisation, there would be no obligation for them to give you that information once they'd left. And furloughing is supposed to be similar. Well, it is similar to redundancy, only that the person is guaranteed their job when they come back, where they're obviously not on a redundancy basis. So it answered that one. If we pay 80% of the wage, national insurance and pension, how will the revenue know that it's 80% to reimburse? Or will they think it's the wage and give us 80% of the 80%?
No, I think there will be, again, I'm speculating here, but thinking logically in the information that we process through the payroll, in a month's time or 6 weeks' time, there'll be a very manual process of uploading to a portal, probably the normal wages, the furloughed wages, and then the calculations will work through. So we will specifically have to request back the furloughed wage and the associated costs for pension and national insurance. So that will be on your payroll provider, or in a lot of cases, us, to sort that.
Brilliant, thank you. And now I'll give you a little out with this because I know CIS tends to be a payroll person conversation rather than an accounts and tax person, Nathan, but I'll answer the question just in case. Do you think they may change the rules for CIS workers as HMRC have monthly records for earnings?
Absolutely not, because CIS is top line income and they're basing what they're giving away on the profit. So they will be very aware that they do have regular information for CIS, so they will know the income. But some people who are on CIS don't earn all their income through CIS for one side. So you could do CIS work 1 week and then private domestic work the next. And also you could incur a load of expenses against that, and they're not going to pay you 80% of your top line. They only want to pay you 80% of your bottom line. So they're never going to look at the CIS.
Brilliant, thank you. Do you anticipate any restrictions on future redundancy decisions at the end of any furlough period for those benefiting from the job retention scheme?
HR lawyer.
Yeah, I'm again HR lawyer, but personally, just answering as Simon, that the answer to that is no. I can't see or think of any restrictions. All the guidance that I've seen, basically furloughing means that they're employed by you. They're still employed by you. They still all the employment rights are still accrue. They're still accruing holidays when they're furloughed. So they just come back at the end of the furlough period as a normal employee, as though that furlough period never existed. You've not seen anything to the contrary of that, Nathan, have you?
No,
I
agree with everything you said there. Is what I've seen.
Yeah. Staff who are identified as suitable for furloughing want to attend staff meetings. Are they allowed?
No.
No, that would be, again, employment lawyer, but that sounds like work to me, Michelle. So that's a no from that one. With the 2 weeks SSP for self-isolation for family suspected corona symptoms, if they then develop symptoms at 10 days and need more than 2 weeks SSP, can it be reclaimed? Or do we just pay the 3 weeks SSP in the example, but claim 2?
Well, unless it's changed, I think you can pay SSP for up to, I can't remember now, 39 weeks or something like that, or maybe even longer. I'm not an expert on SSP. However, the government will only fund the first 14 days. So if you choose to pay yourself SSP beyond that, that's coming out of your own business money. So I think there's a 2 week restriction. Unless that's changed and I've missed it, you'll get the 2 weeks and 2 weeks only.
Yeah, now I had a conversation with Anna last week, funnily enough, in the payroll department, and we worked out that you could get a maximum of 3 weeks on the SSP specifically for coronavirus, on the basis that you might be self-isolating for 14 days because a family member's got coronavirus or symptoms of coronavirus. And then during the course of that 14 days, you don't develop the symptoms. And then you go back to work, or if you're allowed to, you start working from home, and then you develop the symptoms. Now, when you develop the symptoms, you have to self-isolate for 7 days. So you've got a 2-week period with no symptoms, and then you're 7 days with symptoms. But I've not seen that question answered anywhere by anybody other than the conversation that Anna and I had. So that's our take on it. If there's some specific dates that you've got in mind, Vivian, if you let us have them, and then we'll process it and do a proper job for you. It's from Sandra. The construction industry. Sorry, read the construction industry. Are you aware that the levy is being abandoned for this year's payment, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, I don't know. Is the long and short the CITB levy that they apply? I'm not sure. They might postpone it, but it's not really a tax thing. It's just it's a construction specific area. I've not seen. There might be someone, an expert on construction, that's perhaps in here now that can share that later. But it's not something I'm aware of, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I've not seen anything around construction industry or CITB levies at all with regards to them not being levied. And you haven't either, no?
No.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Mark, if an employee is on furlough with company assets at home, working capabilities paid by my business, should they still be using them, i.e. phones, broadband, computers, and can they still claim expenses while on furlough? I assume this is a company decision.
Well, no. Well, first of all, I don't see, from a tax perspective, I don't see any issue with the employees using the equipment personally, because as long as it's been declared as a P11D benefit, they will pay the appropriate tax on it, so their tax code will be adjusted accordingly. Whether they can claim expenses during that period, I would say no, because to claim, it needs to be wholly exclusive for the purpose of the trade, and you shouldn't be doing any work. So if you're using business assets, I think that's okay. If you've got a company car and you're furloughed, again, I've not seen any specifics to suggest otherwise, but I'd imagine you can still use it. Not that you can travel much at the moment, but if you put a mileage claim in during your furloughed period, that would suggest you're carrying out services.
Yeah, so the simple answer to that is, from a business point of view, it wouldn't be corporation tax deductible, and from an employee point of view, it can't be wholly and exclusively and necessary for the purpose of the employment, because you're furloughed and therefore not doing something. So I think on both of those counts, they're not tax deductible, and from an employee point of view, not claimable. But the actual payment from the business, that's a commercial transaction rather than a tax situation. Am I right?
Yeah.
So me as the business owner, if I want to reimburse expenses to somebody that's furloughed, because that's what I've agreed, I could do that. I just wouldn't get a tax deduction for it, and nor would the employee get a tax deduction if they were paying it on behalf of the employer or the employing company. Is that a good summary?
Sort of. Well, I think to an extent you could, like, if you were paying, say if I had a company car and you were paying that lease payment as my employer whilst I was on furlough, I still think you would get the normal corporation tax deduction that you ordinarily would.
Sorry, I was thinking about broadband and mobile telephones. It's like different because of a car. You can't give a car back and because it's a. So I was thinking more specifically about sort of home expenses like the broadband and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of that in practice. I suppose we see that a bit for the owner-managed business, but I don't see that very much. Perhaps if anyone wants any specific advice on that, then get in touch, and then we'll consider the facts on a case-by-case basis. But that has just led me into thinking on P11Ds. Obviously, the tax year end finishes next week. If you do have any assets that are not available during the year, so if you've got a company car, let's say, make sure you claim the dates that it's not available for use, because you will pay tax. All the days the company car is available for use, you will pay tax on. And you can reduce that by specifying the days it's unavailable for use and reduce the tax. Now, for this tax year, it's going to be negligible. But if your company car's sat unusable for 3 months, you don't want to be paying tax for those 3 months.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Nate, and I hadn't even considered that. So if you're self-isolating for 12 weeks, for example, and therefore can't go out, then that's 3/4 of the taxable benefit over the course of the 2 tax years. That could be a significant amount of money from a personal tax perspective for people. Okay, brilliant. I think we need to make a note of that, so just so we can follow up on that one. Thank you. Can training be expensed during furlough?
Well, it depends. But it depends what the question means. So but I don't see why not. So if the employee pays for training, I don't see why the employer can't reimburse the employee. Likewise, the employer should be able to pay direct for any training. I think the legislation's confirmed training's okay.
Yeah, and I totally agree. So if it's training while somebody's furloughed, then it can be expensed, whether it be the individual or the company. And then Simon's asked, are your fees going up as a result of all this? Do you want me to answer that one?
They're doubling, yeah.
There's a significant amount of work, Simon. So in reality, since he stood up 2 weeks ago, it is now, there's been very little work other than these types of conversations that we've been having with people. And it's really interesting debate within the profession as to how far we go with regards to basically giving stuff away. Now, we're all about inspiring, challenging, and supporting people to be the best they can be or best they want to be. But there is lots of stuff that's happening with the small business grants and cash flow forecasts and reclaiming money back from the revenue. And ultimately, somewhere along the line, we're going to have to get paid for doing some of the work that we're doing. But there's an ethical and moral challenge around that, which is currently being debated within the accountant communities as to where we should be with it. But an interesting and thought-provoking question. And obviously, if you're happy for your fees to go up, Simon, then just drop me an email and we'll arrange that at about 4:01. Ali, has Nathan had so many questions about furloughing that he's now drinking neat vodka?
That's right, it is. It's mixed with gin, actually. I've been teetotal for 4.5 years until today.
And then from Michelle, what if you are still in hospital? I have a member of staff confirmed with CV in hospital. So is that specifically, Michelle, around furloughing people or around sick pay and the fact that they're in hospital for a long time? Or just perhaps the SSP. So if they're in hospital, they get normal SSP after the end of the 14 days, Nathan, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just refundable in the normal way. So
no, I'm not sure, though, off the back of that, once the isolation period is up, if you're well enough to work, but the work's not open, I don't know what happens. Can you then be furloughed? I presume you probably can. If you go back to full health, can you be furloughed as long as we're still in the initial 3-month period? I think so, but if they're already sick, they're sick. You can't convert the sick to furlough.
Yeah, correct. And just the same as you can't, again, it's the employer-lawyer question, but if you're on maternity leave and then you come back after maternity leave, you can be furloughed straight into maternity leave. That's I'm 99% sure that's right.
Sorry, you can be furloughed straight into maternity.
Sorry, you can be furloughed straight after maternity leave.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
If somebody's sat at home on maternity leave and not getting paid for the last 3 months of the maternity leave, they might want to give notice that they're coming back earlier in order to come back. But anyway, that's one idea. Can we claim that back though, as it's coronavirus? You can claim back the SSP, can't you? There's no reason why not.
It's only the first 14 days.
Only the first 14 days.
I think so. I've not seen anything to suggest otherwise. So if you're off with coronavirus for longer than that, I think the SSP is still funded by the employer. But I'm not entirely sure. I've not seen anything to the contrary, but it's not my expertise, the SSP. But we can look at that.
Yeah, so if you want to know categorically on that, Michelle, if you email me on simon@greenstones.co.uk, I'll get Anna or Liz in the payroll department just to confirm that off for you. Right, we're up to 10 to 4, and I'm on the last. Well, I've got 2 questions. So if you've got a question, there's your chance to put in. I've just had in the chat from another accountant that I know that's watching today. Yes, it's 2 weeks for C19 paid sick only. So there's not been any extension.
Yeah, that's
On
sorry.
that.
That's the government credit back. You can keep
Yeah,
paying your employee.
whatever you like.
Comes out the employer. It's the employer's cost thereafter.
Brilliant, thank you. How do we deal with a staff member still at work who will be unhappy when the other colleagues at home receiving 80/100% furloughed?
If you let us know when you find out, that'd be really helpful.
Mark, do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think the only suggestion is, what would you prefer, 80% of 100% or 100% of nothing? I think that's the only question I've heard that's close to being the right one. But it's a bit brutal, I suppose. But that's all it is.
Yeah, I think it is actually a common question at the minute, and I am being asked it. But ultimately, the furlough starts with the employer. So again, it comes with all kinds of employment law here. But if someone's going to sulk about having to work for 100%, then the power is still with the employer. The employer doesn't have to furlough that person. The employer could make that person redundant. So if people start showing their true colours in this, which we're all in together, the whole world, 7 billion people, if someone's stopped because he's having to work for 100%, whereas the lazy ones can do nothing for 80%, then it perhaps true colours are coming out at that point. That's my aggressive approach. But check with your employment lawyer before you do anything with that.
Yeah. So again, check with the employment lawyer. The other thing that you need to be very careful about with the furloughed is that you're not seen to be furloughing your mates and not furloughing the person that is, what shall I say, potentially more difficult or political within the working environment, because that's begging a unfair dismissal or a discrimination case when we get through this. So you need to be really careful and make sure that you're doing that on an equitable basis. But other than that, how do you motivate somebody that is working for 100% when you've laid off other people at 80%? Other than forming some sort of rota around the 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off potentially, or whatever. I don't know, but it's a really interesting office politics type question. I've got 2 more questions on the chat. Ian, do we get a discount on the fees, as there isn't much to be done for owner-managed businesses at the moment?
File that one under the sarcastic questions.
As always with things like this, I say I'm working on it and thinking about it, and I'll let you know in due course. What about the other way around, when somebody is intent on working? Now, this is a really, I don't know, have you seen, so if you furlough somebody, Nathan, and somebody is intent on working, what's the consequences of that? Do you know? Because Daniel shared it last Tuesday morning.
Sorry, if they've been furloughed and sent home, but they're still logging on and working.
Yeah.
Well, then the employer can't legally claim that. As my understanding, the employer then can't legally claim the grant back because they are considered working.
That's right. Yeah, so that's basically what Daniel said on Tuesday morning, that if you furlough somebody and they continue to work, then it's the employer that either shouldn't claim the grant, and if they do claim the grant and they get caught, then the grant will be charged. They'll ask for the grant back, basically, along with potentially penalties and an interest on it. So
just on that as well, because the furlough is designed to provide the funding to the employers who can't afford to pay their team, and that's ultimately the team who can't work. So if you physically cannot work at home, if your job isn't impossible to do at home, the furlough system of course works. If your team member is if your job description, the business and the team member is well enough to work from home, then they should work from home and be paid as normal by the employer. So if there's work to do. So it's, again, because for example, GreenStones, at the minute, we can all work from home. So there is, in theory, we could exploit the system and all be furloughed, not do anything and be funded. But ultimately, the job can carry on. So therefore, the employer should pay the employees. So what I would say is don't manipulate the system.
No, but it's really interesting from an employer point of view. If I furloughed somebody because there's technically no work to do, there is always something that can be done. You could be writing systems or writing blogs to publish when the world picks up again, tidying up your inbox. There's a whole host of stuff that people can do when they're bored. And it's that challenge. And I'm 99% sure Daniel talked about having something in the agreement that makes that gross misconduct and recoverable from the team member. But then how do you get it back from the? But there's another question coming up from Mark in a minute, which we'll answer it now. So Mark says, how is the government going to know if somebody who is on furlough is working?
Well, how is the government going to know? Well,
do you want me to answer that one?
It's a bit like, how is the government going to know if you put your holiday into the travel expenses of the business? Ultimately, they probably won't unless you look. Now, as a professional person, if I know that someone's been working active on LinkedIn, whatever it is, I wouldn't like to see those employees' furloughed costs being claimed. So whilst I can't imagine HMRC or anybody investigating the millions of people that are going to be furloughed, but you wouldn't like to be the one that gets caught, is my stance on it.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of things there at the moment, and within the community that and people that I'm talking to, there is lots of stuff going on at the moment in order to help people survive. And I think it's safe to say that the goodwill is there, both at government level and at council level. And I heard a story about somebody with a takeaway license that was granted a license within 24 hours. Well, that's never happens for the council to turn something around as quick as that. So I think there's quite a bit of goodwill around it. And if it, I hesitate to say it, but as long as the Mickey is not taken, then who will know is the simple answer, I think. Richard, how do I work out what to pay my employees mid-April who are furloughed?
Well, it'll be on an average daily basis. So if you give us the specifics after this webinar, then we'll advise.
Yeah, so if you email us on Simon at greenstones.co.uk or Nathan at greenstones.co, we'll help you with that calculation. But it's basically, if you furlough them mid-April, it's pro rata. So number of days before is normal pay and number of days after is furlough pay, on which you can then claim the 80%. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Brilliant. And Mark's just messaged me to say that he'll put both of those email addresses in the chat box. So if you want to email us, then just click on the thing and it'll open up a browser and away you go. And then I've got 2 more questions and we've got 5 minutes to go. Nicola's asked, I'm a limited company, but a single worker director. Sounds like furloughing will not work as I have to keep working. Sounds like business interruption loan is also not a great idea. What are your suggestions for the smallest 3-month cash flow, i.e. $3,000 a month over 3 months?
Yeah, Nicola's in quite a big pool of people here, so there's no magic wand for this. It's just a case of defer as much as you can, collect as much as you can, and spend as little as you possibly can. So go through, stop any kind of expense that's not necessary, not essential. And you could potentially claim universal credits in the meantime if you're not going to be earning, but then later on this year, if you do have a good period, you could end up paying the credits back. Or in the next tax year, I should say, which starts in 10 days' time. It's not an easy one I can answer, I'm afraid. Again, we could look at it on a case-by-case basis and look at what your costs are, help you with some projections, potentially help with some funding. It does sound like what you're saying, that a lot of the business interruption loans will loan up to 25,000 pretty easily. So if that is something that, if 25,000 is going to be enough, maybe it's worth looking at that. Of course, you have the issue of repaying it, but they're meant to be no setup fee, no arrangement fee, no interest for 12 months. Might be worth looking into that, putting it into a separate account and just dipping into it if you need it.
Yeah, and I'd second that. And then the first place to go is the tax man. So if there's any corporation tax that's due in the next 3 months or VAT that's due in the next 3 months, they all should be postponed. And then generally speaking, I joke about stuff like this, but if you go to somewhere like tescos.com, there's there's quite a simple process to get that sort of money, or even credit cards. I know the interest is high on that, but they're easy sources of money if you don't need it for a long period of time and don't want to go through the rigmarole of going to the banks to get the to get the small firms loan guarantee scheme, or whatever language it is that they're using now. But those loans, Nathan, am I right that they've just extended the interest-free period to 12 months?
Yeah, it was 6 and now it's 12. Yeah.
And I know lots of the banks, if you can get the loan, lots of the banks are doing a capital repayment holiday, so you don't pay any capital back for the first 6 months as well. So I wouldn't completely dismiss it, certainly at those lower levels. And then the last question, or it's not a question, it's a statement from Chris. So if anybody's got any other questions, then fire them in. And Chris has said the problem is if there's no income, we're better off to shut down, which is basically what a number of small business owners are working.
Better to make nothing than losses, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then the last question, is there a government form to notify staff they're being furloughed?
There's not a government form, but we did share a template after the conversation on Tuesday. I'm not sure if that needs revising following the updated guidance last night, but if anyone wants that, again, if you email, Mark should have shared the email addresses now. If you email one of us, we will share it with you. And I'm sure we can add it to the next. If you're not on the GreenStones mailing list, please ask to be put on, because we put links to things like that. The download will go as part of our follow-up emails.
Yeah. So this afternoon, I've got an email here that's about to be finished off to go to everybody that's on the email list, asking frequently asked questions, or answering frequently asked questions around the coronavirus job retention scheme, and also the help for the self-employment. So if you want anything like that, and we're sharing videos, and obviously this is getting recorded, then we'll send it out. That form was given to us by Daniel Barnett, who is a leading employment law barrister down in London. I have seen some bigger ones since then from other lawyers, which I don't have permission to share. But obviously, where there's the potential for a claim and the potential for the blame, then the lawyers can turn that into pages and pages and pages of documents in order to make sure you're covered off. But we do have a basic one if anybody would like it. So that's all the answers finished, and we've got 1 minute to go. So that just leaves me a chance to say thank you very much to Nathan for stepping in for Nicola, who's normally here. Nicola's off helping a customer with a bit of a challenge that they've got this afternoon, and for Mark for popping in and doing the business advice stuff, and for managing the chat box, so I didn't have to cope with that. So thank you very much to you two, and then thank you very much to everybody that's come along on a Friday afternoon to find out more about coronavirus and different things that are happening in the business world in order to keep businesses alive. As always, if anybody's got any personal questions that they've got that they don't want to put in the chat or share with other people or put in the WhatsApp group or the Facebook group, then just email us on nathan@ or simon@greenstones.co.uk, and we'll be happy to support you as best we can. That's all. We'll just check the questions are all done, and lots of thank yous. So thank you very much, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Cheers, Nathan. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Bye. See you. Bye.